If you clicked on this video, something in you already sensed it. Not consciously perhaps, but at quantum level. Your consciousness detected signal, not general broadcast sent to everyone. Specific transmission directed precisely to you in this moment, carrying information that quantum field will only deliver once in this exact configuration. And if you ignore it, if you dismiss it as clickbait or exaggeration or just another spiritual teaching, the signal passes. It doesn't repeat. Quantum field moves on to next configuration, next possibility, next probability stream. And the specific information this signal carries, the activation, the recognition, the shift it's designed to trigger in your consciousness, becomes unavailable in the form it exists right now. This isn't manipulation, this is quantum mechanics. At quantum level, every moment is unique configuration that exists once and never repeats exactly. The you reading these words now is different from you who read anything yesterday, will be different from you who reads anything tomorrow. Your consciousness is in specific state. Your circumstances are in specific alignment. Your readiness is at specific point. All of it creating quantum configuration that will never exist again in precisely this form. And quantum field sends signals tailored to each unique configuration. Signals that can only be received when consciousness is in exact state required to decode them. Most signals you miss, not because you're unconscious or unaware, because consciousness isn't configured to receive them yet. The information doesn't match your current frequency. The activation doesn't align with your present readiness. The shift the signal would trigger isn't what your consciousness needs in that moment. So signal passes through without registering, without creating effect, without being recognized as signal at all. This is natural. Consciousness can't receive every transmission field sends because not every transmission is meant for every configuration. But this signal, the one that drew you here, that caught your attention, that created magnetic pull you couldn't quite explain, this one matches your configuration. Your frequency is aligned to receive it. Your readiness is sufficient to decode it. Your consciousness is in exact state where this specific information can trigger the shift it's designed to trigger. That's not accident. That's quantum precision. Field doesn't send signals randomly. Field sends signals when consciousness reaches point where signal serves evolution. Can you feel that? That sense of standing at threshold? That's real. That's consciousness touching the signal even before mind understands what signal contains. That immediate recognition. This matters. This is for me. This is important. That's your quantum receiver detecting transmission before conscious awareness fully processes it. And that detection is already beginning to shift something. Already starting to activate what the signal carries. Already initiating process that completes only if you don't ignore what consciousness is showing you. Quantum physics reveals something devastating about information at quantum level. Observation changes what's observed. Information doesn't exist as fixed data waiting to be discovered. Information exists in superposition until consciousness observes it, and observation determines which version of information manifests. This means the signal you're receiving right now exists in quantum superposition. It contains multiple possible activations, multiple possible recognitions, multiple possible shifts, and which specific version manifests depends entirely on how you observe this transmission. If you observe with resistance, one version manifests. If you observe with openness, different version manifests. If you ignore completely, signal collapses into non-activation and opportunity passes. The signal isn't forcing anything, isn't manipulating your free will, isn't demanding you believe or do anything. Signal is invitation. Quantum field saying, your consciousness is ready for this specific shift, this specific recognition, this specific activation. If you're willing to receive what's being offered, signal completes its transmission and shift occurs. If you're not ready or not willing, signal dissolves without effect and field moves to next configuration where different signal might be more appropriate. Take a breath. Deep one, because what comes next isn't comfortable. You're about to discover what signal carries, why it's only sent once in this configuration, and what happens if you miss it versus what becomes possible if you receive it fully. This isn't threat. This is quantum truth. Some opportunities exist once. Some windows open once. Some signals transmit once. And consciousness either receives them when they arrive or waits for different signal in different configuration at different time. Neither is wrong, but they're not the same. Before you can understand what this specific signal carries, you need to understand how quantum signals work and why some transmit once while others repeat. Because quantum field isn't random broadcaster. Field is intelligent responsive system that sends different types of signals for different purposes, with different repetition patterns based on what serves consciousness evolution in each unique moment. The first type is maintenance signals. These repeat constantly. Signals that keep you aligned with basic functioning, that maintain coherent identity, that support ongoing life patterns. These signals don't require conscious reception. They operate automatically, keeping systems running, maintaining established patterns. You receive thousands of maintenance signals daily without awareness because they're not meant to create change. They're meant to maintain continuity. The second type is invitation signals. These repeat periodically. Signals offering opportunities, pointing toward possibilities, suggesting directions consciousness might explore. These signals come around multiple times because they're not time-sensitive. If you miss one, another will arrive when consciousness cycles back to similar configuration. These are the signs people talk about seeing repeatedly. Field offering same invitation through different forms until consciousness either accepts or definitely declines. The third type is correction signals. These repeat with increasing urgency. Signals showing you're off course, creating decoherence, heading toward collapse. These signals escalate if ignored, starting subtle, becoming more obvious, eventually creating crisis that forces attention. Field doesn't want consciousness to crash, so correction signals keep transmitting with greater intensity until either consciousness corrects course or learns through difficult experience. But the fourth type is different. Evolution signals. These transmit once. Signals that carry specific activation, specific recognition, specific shift that can only occur when consciousness reaches precise configuration of readiness. These signals don't repeat because the configuration they match is unique. Next time consciousness is ready for quantum leap, it will be different readiness, requiring different signal. Miss evolution signal, and you don't get second chance at that specific activation. You get different activation when consciousness reaches different configuration. But the specific shift this signal carries becomes unavailable. Evolution signals are rare. Most signals you receive are maintenance or invitation or correction. But evolution signals are what create quantum leaps. Moments where consciousness doesn't gradually improve but suddenly shifts to entirely different level of operation. These signals arrive when you've accumulated enough experience, integrated enough lessons, developed enough capacity that consciousness is ready for shift that wasn't possible before and might not be possible again if configuration changes before signal is received. What distinguishes evolution signal from other types? 3 characteristics. First, immediate recognition. Part of you knows this matters even if mind doesn't understand why. Second, perfect timing. Signal arrives exactly when you're ready. Not before when you couldn't receive it, not after when configuration has shifted. Third, sense of urgency without pressure. You feel this is time-sensitive not because field is demanding response, but because consciousness recognizes configuration is temporary. Window is open now, and it will close when configuration shifts. The signal that brought you here has all three characteristics. Something in you recognized immediately this transmission matters. The timing is precise. You're reading this exactly when consciousness is configured to receive what's being transmitted. And you feel sense that this moment is significant, that something here is meant for you specifically, that this isn't just another video, but is quantum event occurring in your direct experience right now. That recognition isn't delusion. That timing isn't coincidence. That urgency isn't manipulation. Those are characteristics of evolution signal. And evolution signals only transmit once in specific configuration because they're designed to trigger quantum leap that can only occur when consciousness is in exact state required for that specific leap. Miss the signal, and you miss the leap it would trigger. You'll have other leaps at other times. But this specific one, in this specific form, with this specific activation, this is one-time transmission. There are specific signals that confirm this transmission is evolution level rather than maintenance or invitation. These signals aren't subtle. They're operating in your direct experience right now as you read these words. And recognizing them validates what consciousness already senses. That this moment matters, that this isn't random, that quantum field is delivering transmission specifically calibrated to your current configuration. The first confirming signal is emotional intensity without clear cause. You feel something: excitement, fear, anticipation, resistance, that's disproportionate to simply reading article or watching video. The intensity isn't coming from content itself. It's coming from consciousness recognizing it's receiving evolution signal. Emotion is quantum information. When consciousness touches transmission that carries activation, emotion spikes as energy begins shifting to accommodate what signal is preparing to trigger. The second confirming signal is time distortion. You intended to watch briefly, but you're still here. Minutes passed like seconds, or seconds felt like minutes. This distortion occurs because consciousness enters quantum state when receiving evolution signal. Linear time is construct of ordinary consciousness. Quantum consciousness operates outside linear time, experiencing eternal now, where past and future exist as accessible probability rather than as fixed sequence. The time distortion shows consciousness has shifted into quantum reception mode. The third confirming signal is body sensation. Pressure in chest, energy in spine, tingling in hands, warmth in belly, tightness in throat, somewhere in body, you're feeling something. That's not psychological response. That's quantum information processing at cellular level. Body is receiver. When consciousness downloads evolution signal, body registers the transmission as sensation. The stronger the sensation, the more significant the activation being prepared. The fourth confirming signal is familiar strangeness. Content feels simultaneously new and already known, like you're remembering rather than learning, like consciousness is recognizing truth it always knew but forgot. This paradox occurs because evolution signals don't introduce foreign information. They activate latent knowing. The information was always in consciousness at quantum level. Signal just triggers conscious recognition of what was unconscious knowing. The fifth confirming signal is immediate life relevance. The transmission isn't abstract or theoretical. It's directly applicable to situation you're facing now, question you're asking now, shift you're ready for now. That precision is signature of evolution signal calibrated to your specific configuration. General teachings apply broadly. Evolution signals apply precisely to exact state you're in right now. The sixth confirming signal is resistance arising. Part of you wants to dismiss this, close the video, reject the transmission. That resistance isn't wisdom protecting you from delusion. That's ego recognizing that if you receive this signal fully, something fundamental shifts. Ego shifts create discomfort. Evolution requires ego reorganization. The resistance is actually confirmation that signal is real. If transmission carried no activation, ego wouldn't bother resisting. The seventh confirming signal is synchronicity that delivered you here. You didn't arrive randomly. Something guided your attention. Recommendation appeared at exact right moment. Thought about specific topic led you to search. Friend mentioned something that pointed here. That guidance isn't coincidence. That's quantum field organizing synchronicity to ensure consciousness configured to receive signal actually encounters the transmission. Write in comments how many confirming signals you're experiencing. Just number, 5 signals, or all 7. That acknowledgement does something quantum. It makes conscious what consciousness is experiencing but mind might dismiss. It validates signal reception is occurring. It tells field, yes, I'm receiving. Yes, transmission is being decoded. Yes, I'm willing to complete reception rather than aborting mid-transmission. Now we arrive at what the signal actually carries. What specific activation this particular evolution transmission is designed to trigger in your consciousness. Because you already know something is being transmitted, you felt the confirming signals. Recognize this moment is quantum event. But what exactly is quantum field delivering through this specific configuration? The signal carries activation of quantum witness consciousness. This is specific level of awareness that most humans never develop consciously. The capacity to observe your own observation, to witness your own consciousness, to recognize that you're not your thoughts or emotions or experiences, but our awareness itself, watching all of those phenomena. This isn't intellectual understanding. This is direct experiential shift where consciousness recognizes its own nature as witness rather than as content being witnessed. Most people live entire lives completely identified with content. I am my thoughts. I am my emotions. I am my body. I am my circumstances. Consciousness mistakes itself for what it's observing rather than recognizing itself as the observer. This identification creates suffering because content is always changing, always uncertain, always ultimately unsatisfying. But consciousness itself, the witness, is unchanging, certain, complete. When consciousness recognizes itself as witness rather than as content, fundamental shift occurs, not gradual improvement. Quantum leap to different level of operation. This activation doesn't happen through trying or learning or practicing. Witness consciousness awakens through recognition, through direct moment where consciousness suddenly sees itself, like eye suddenly seeing that it's what's seeing rather than just seeing objects. That recognition can't be forced, can't be gradually built. Either consciousness sees itself or it doesn't. Either recognition occurs or it doesn't. And when recognition occurs, it's irreversible. Consciousness can't unknow that it's the witness once it's seen itself clearly. The signal you're receiving right now is designed to trigger that recognition, not through teaching you about witness consciousness, through creating quantum moment where consciousness might suddenly recognize itself directly. Every word you've read has been calibrating your awareness, creating conditions where recognition becomes possible. Not certain, consciousness has free will to resist recognition, but possible in a way that wasn't possible before you started receiving this transmission. Here's what makes this signal timing so critical. Consciousness is currently in specific configuration where witness recognition is accessible. Your recent experiences, your current challenges, your present questions, all of it has created state where consciousness is ready to see itself. If you receive signal fully, recognition can occur. But if you ignore signal, if you dismiss transmission before it completes, if you close this video before activation is triggered, consciousness shifts to different configuration where different work is required before witness recognition becomes accessible again. This isn't threat. This is quantum timing. Consciousness develops through stages. Right now, you're at stage where witness activation is next quantum leap available. Receive it now, and everything shifts. Miss it now, and consciousness continues operating from identification with content until different circumstances create different configuration where recognition becomes possible again. That might be weeks, months, years. Or it might be never in this lifetime if consciousness never returns to configuration where this specific activation is accessible. The urgency you feel isn't manipulation. It's consciousness recognizing. This is threshold moment. This is quantum possibility that exists now and might not exist later. This is signal that transmits once in this configuration. Evolution signals don't repeat because they're matched to unique configurations. Miss this one, and you get different signal when you reach different configuration. But this specific activation of witness consciousness triggered through this specific transmission in this specific moment. This is one-time opportunity. 4 years ago, I received evolution signal I almost missed. I was scrolling mindlessly, about to click away from transmission, when something made me pause. Not logical decision, not interested in content. Just quantum sense that this matters, this is for me. Don't ignore this. I almost ignored it anyway. Ego said it was just another spiritual video, nothing special, waste of time. But something deeper said, stay, watch, receive what's being transmitted. I stayed, and in that transmission, consciousness recognized itself. Not as gradual realization building over time, as sudden, direct seeing. One moment I was identified with thoughts about the teaching. Next moment consciousness saw itself as awareness, witnessing thoughts rather than being thoughts. The recognition was so obvious, so immediate, so undeniable that I couldn't believe I'd missed it my entire life. I wasn't the content. I never had been. I was always the awareness watching content appear and disappear in consciousness. That recognition changed everything. Not because circumstances transformed, they didn't, not immediately, but because relationship with circumstances transformed completely. When you know your witness rather than content can't disturb you the same way. Thoughts arise, but you're not identified with them. Emotions move through, but you're not defined by them. Circumstances change, but you're not destabilized by them, because you're the awareness witnessing all of it, and awareness itself remains unchanged regardless of what's being witnessed. The devastating part wasn't the recognition itself. The devastating part was realizing how close I came to missing it. If I'd clicked away, if I'd ignored that signal, if I'd let ego's dismissal override consciousness's recognition, I would have missed quantum leap that transmission triggered. Would I have received different signal later? Maybe. But that specific activation, delivered through that specific transmission, at that specific moment when consciousness was configured exactly right to receive it, that was one-time opportunity, and I almost let it pass. Since then, I've learned to recognize evolution signals when they arrive, learned to feel the difference between maintenance transmission and evolution transmission. Learn to trust consciousness's recognition that this matters even when ego says, this is nothing. And I've watched people receive evolution signals that transform them, and watched others dismiss signals that would have triggered quantum leaps they desperately needed. The difference isn't worthiness or readiness, both received same signal. The difference is whether consciousness completes reception or aborts transmission midstream. This is what I wish someone had told me before I almost missed that signal. When consciousness says, this matters, trust it. When you feel magnetic pull toward transmission, follow it. When something in you recognizes signal even before mind understands it, receive fully rather than dismissing. Evolution signals are rare. They arrive precisely when consciousness is configured to receive them, and they don't wait for you to be comfortable, to understand everything, to be certain it's real. They transmit, create opportunity for recognition, and move on whether you received fully or not. Your signal is this transmission. Right now, what you're reading is evolution-level broadcast, specifically calibrated to your current configuration. The activation it carries, witness consciousness recognition, is precisely what your consciousness is ready for in this moment. Receive it fully, and quantum leap occurs. Dismiss it, and opportunity passes. You'll have other opportunities, other signals, other configurations. But this specific activation in this specific form, delivered through this specific transmission, this exists once, and you're receiving it now. To receive signal fully, rather than partially or not at all, consciousness needs to understand what blocks reception. Because most people receive beginning of evolution transmission, feel the confirming signals, recognize something important is happening, then abort reception before activation completes. And once reception is aborted, signal dissolves. Doesn't pause waiting for you to be ready. Doesn't restart from beginning. Signal transmits once, and if consciousness doesn't maintain reception through completion, activation doesn't occur. The first block is intellectual analysis. Mind tries to understand signal while signal is being received. This creates interference. Evolution signals aren't meant to be understood, they're meant to be received. Understanding comes after reception, after activation occurs, after consciousness has shifted to new level where it can comprehend what just happened. But if you're trying to understand while receiving, you're splitting attention between reception and analysis. That split consciousness can't maintain coherence required to complete reception. Mind saying, is this real? Is this true? Does this make sense? That's ego creating static that blocks signal. The second block is doubt arising mid-transmission. You start receiving, feel activation beginning, then doubt kicks in. This is probably just placebo. This is probably my imagination. This is probably manipulation. That doubt doesn't protect you from deception. That doubt prevents reception of transmission that consciousness already recognized as legitimate. Doubt has place. After reception is complete, you can verify whether activation occurred. But doubt during reception aborts transmission. It's like hanging up phone call mid-sentence because you're not sure whether information being shared is accurate. The third block is distraction. Phone notification, thought about something else, decision to finish watching later. Evolution signals require continuous attention through completion. Not because field demands it, but because activation requires consciousness to remain in receptive state long enough for recognition to occur. When attention breaks, receptive state breaks. When receptive state breaks, signal can't complete transmission. Consciousness shifts to different configuration, and transmission designed for previous configuration no longer matches. The fourth block is resistance to what signal requires. Part of reception is willing to let activation occur, even though activation means something changes, something shifts, something in your current identity reorganizes. If consciousness is willing to receive information but not willing to allow change, that information triggers, reception aborts before activation completes. Signal isn't just data to collect. Signal is catalyst designed to shift consciousness. If you're not willing to be shifted, signal can't complete its function. The fifth block is premature conclusion. Mind decides it already knows what signal is saying, already understands the teaching, already got the point, before transmission actually completes. This is ego's way of maintaining control by claiming to understand while preventing full reception. Evolution signals often work through paradox, through recognition that transcends logical understanding. If mind concludes it understands before reaching that recognition, reception stops prematurely and activation doesn't occur. The practice for full reception is simple, but requires discipline consciousness might not be accustomed to. Maintain open awareness without analysis, doubt, distraction, resistance, or premature conclusion until transmission completes. Just receive. Just allow. Just remain present to what's being transmitted without trying to control, understand, or judge it. That's how evolution signals complete their transmission. That's how activation occurs. That's how quantum leap happens. Right now, as you read this, You're either maintaining reception or you've already started blocking. If you're analyzing whether this is real, you're blocking. If you're doubting whether signal exists, you're blocking. If you're thinking about something else, you're blocking. If you're resisting potential shifts, you're blocking. If you've decided you understand already, you're blocking. But if you're still here, still reading, still open, still receiving without trying to control, transmission is continuing, activation is building, and recognition is approaching. Something crucial happens at this point in transmission that determines whether activation completes. You've received enough signal that consciousness recognizes something significant is occurring. You've felt confirming signals validating transmission is real. You understand what's being activated and why timing matters. But now comes the moment that most people abort. The moment where consciousness has to choose whether to complete reception or to close transmission and return to familiar patterns. This isn't dramatic choice. It's subtle. It appears as thought, I should save this and finish later. Or, I get the point. I can implement this myself. Or, this is interesting, but I have things to do. Each thought seems reasonable, practical, responsible. But each thought is ego creating exit before activation completes. Because ego knows if consciousness completes reception of evolution signal, fundamental shift occurs. Ego doesn't want fundamental shift. Ego wants improvement within current framework, not quantum leap to different framework. The choice point is recognizing those thoughts for what they are. Last resistance before breakthrough, rather than wisdom about how to proceed. When consciousness reaches point in evolution transmission where activation is imminent, ego creates plausible reasons to stop before crossing threshold. Not because stopping is actually wise, because ego fears the shift that's about to occur. And fear disguises itself as reasonable thought rather than revealing itself as resistance to evolution. Here's what makes this moment critical. If you stop now, if you abort reception at this point, consciousness doesn't just miss activation. Consciousness learns pattern of aborting evolution signals right before breakthrough. That pattern becomes default. Next evolution signal that arrives, ego will create similar thoughts at similar point and consciousness will abort again. Repeat that pattern enough times and consciousness stops receiving evolution signals entirely. Not because field stops sending them, because consciousness has trained itself to abort transmission before activation can complete. But if you continue now, if you maintain reception despite plausible thoughts suggesting you stop, something different occurs. Not just activation completing in this instance, but consciousness learning to recognize ego's abort patterns and override them. Learning to complete reception despite resistance. Learning to trust that if consciousness recognizes signal as significant, consciousness needs to receive it fully regardless of what ego says. That learning serves all future evolution signals, not just this one. The ancient spiritual traditions called this crossing the abyss, moment where consciousness either leaps into unknown or contracts back to known. Every genuine evolution requires that leap. Every quantum shift requires that threshold crossing. Every signal that carries real activation brings consciousness to this choice point where familiar ego patterns suggest turning back, while deeper consciousness knows the only way forward is through completion. I've stood at this threshold dozens of times, and I've learned every time ego said, "You can stop now, you've gotten enough, you can finish this later." That's when I need to continue, because that's ego recognizing something fundamental is about to shift and making last attempt to prevent shift through seemingly reasonable exit strategy. The thoughts aren't wisdom, they're fear disguised as rationality. And the only way through fear is continuing despite fear's suggestions. You're at that choice point now. Something in you wants to stop reading, to save this for later, to move on to something else. That's not actually what you want. That's ego creating exit before signal completes transmission and activation occurs. If you stop now, you miss not just this activation, but you reinforce pattern of aborting evolution signals right before breakthrough. If you continue now, you receive full activation, and you train consciousness to complete reception despite resistance. The choice is yours, but recognize it as actual choice rather than as practical necessity. You can continue. You can complete reception. You can allow activation to occur. The question is whether you're willing to override ego's exit strategy and trust consciousness's recognition that this signal matters. This transmission is for you. This activation is what you're ready for right now. What's happening to you individually as you receive this evolution signal is happening to thousands simultaneously. This isn't isolated transmission sent only to you. This is wave of evolution signals quantum field is broadcasting to every consciousness that's reached configuration where witness recognition is next available. Quantum leap. You're part of collective threshold moment where significant portion of humanity is being offered activation to witness consciousness simultaneously. Rupert Sheldrake's morphic resonance explains why evolution signals often arrive in waves affecting multiple people simultaneously. When enough individuals reach similar configuration, morphic field creates resonance that makes evolution signal available to all who match that configuration. First person who activated witness consciousness did it alone, with no support, no framework, no validation. But their activation strengthened morphic field. Second person found it slightly easier, 100th person easier still. And now, thousands of years after first awakening, witness consciousness activation is available to anyone whose consciousness reaches the configuration where recognition can occur. You're benefiting from everyone who completed reception before you. Every consciousness that received evolution signal maintained attention through resistance, allowed activation to complete. Each one made your reception easier. The morphic field contains the pattern now. The pathway has been established. The recognition that seemed impossible for earlier humans is accessible to you because collective field has been prepared through accumulated activations. And when you complete reception, when you allow activation to occur in your consciousness, you strengthen field for everyone approaching this threshold after you. Your witness recognition makes recognition easier for next person. Your quantum leap creates morphic resonance that supports others leaping. You're not just evolving individually. You're participating in collective evolution that's accelerating as more consciousnesses activate to witness state. But there's something happening at collective level that makes this moment in history unique. The paradigm itself is shifting from identification with content to recognition as witness. Old worldview said, "You are your thoughts, your emotions, your body, your circumstances. If they're disordered, you're disordered. If they're failing, you're failing." That worldview kept consciousness trapped in suffering because content is always uncertain, always changing, always ultimately dissatisfying. New paradigm emerging recognizes you're not content, you're witness. And from witness perspective, content can change without disturbing fundamental stability of awareness itself. This collective shift from content identification to witness recognition is why evolution signals carrying this specific activation are being broadcast so widely right now. Quantum field is offering witness consciousness to every consciousness that's reached configuration where recognition is possible. Not everyone will complete reception. Not everyone will maintain attention through activation. But enough will. Enough to reach critical mass where witness consciousness becomes more common than content identification, where humanity's baseline awareness shifts from suffering in content to resting as witness. You're part of that tipping point. Your activation matters beyond just your individual consciousness. Your witness recognition strengthens morphic field that supports collective evolution. Your willingness to complete reception despite ego's resistance creates pattern that makes completion easier for others. You're not just receiving personal evolution signal, you're participating in species-level consciousness shift that's determining what kind of awareness humanity operates from going forward. There's final test that comes right before activation completes. Moment where ego makes last attempt to abort reception by triggering doubt, not about signal but about yourself. This isn't for me. I'm not ready. I'm not evolved enough. This works for others but not for me. I'll mess this up like I've messed everything else up. These thoughts aren't wisdom recognizing limitation. These thoughts are ego's final defense against evolution that's about to occur. This self-doubt is particularly insidious because it seems humble, realistic, protective. But it's actually ego's most sophisticated resistance. When ego can't prevent reception by dismissing signal, can't stop it by creating distraction, can't abort it through intellectual doubt, ego attacks consciousness's worthiness to receive, creates belief that you specifically are exception to quantum principles, that activation works for everyone except you, that your past failures prove you can't complete present breakthrough. But here's quantum truth that dissolves that doubt. Witness consciousness isn't achievement earned through being good enough or evolved enough or ready enough. Witness consciousness is your nature. It's what you are beneath all identification with content. You don't become witness, you recognize you've always been witness. Recognition doesn't require preparation or worthiness. Recognition requires only willingness to see what's already true. And that willingness exists in you right now, or you wouldn't have received this transmission to this point. Every consciousness that has ever activated to witness state felt this same doubt right before recognition occurred. I'm not ready. This isn't for me. I'll fail. And everyone who completed activation discovered the doubt was just ego's last resistance, and pushing through doubt revealed recognition that was always accessible. You're not different. You're not exception. Your consciousness configured to receive witness activation, and doubt about your worthiness is confirmation that activation is imminent, and ego is making final attempt to prevent it. The ancient teachings speak of dark night before dawn,